Captain Jack here. Today I thought we'd look at some of the exciting Atari homebrews that have been released this year. All of the homebrews featured here have been released in the last 365 days and can be found at atariage.com. The link will be in the description. Make sure to play this video at 60 FPS because some of these games have graphical tricks only visible at a high frame rate. Let's get started. Electro Ball is kinda like Pong on steroids or a top-down ball blazer. You'll grab the ball and shoot it into the goal to score points. Up and down will actually control your defending paddle, meaning you'll be able to attack and defend at the same time. There's quite a bit of strategy here, and the physics are pretty top-notch for the Atari. There's the expected two-player mode and AI difficulty settings, but there's also different seasons which can dictate the play field. Spring is the standard field, summer has the goalposts move up and down, fall removes the defensive paddles but adds a player-proof force field, and winter makes the goalposts shrink and expand. This one's almost impossible to score in. Electro Ball has by far the best two-player experience of any of the games on this list, and has a surprising amount of polish. I don't even know graphically what more could be done here. The Atari really is the ultimate Pong machine. Heist 2 has you grabbing the bag in any way possible. It's a simple cops and robbers game that has you grab the money and exit the building, all while cops hunt you down. The cops really aren't the main obstacle here. You have 6 bullets and there's never 6 cops. Funny how that works. The real villain here are these red gates that switch on and off. There's a pretty short window on these, so you'll have to start moving before they turn off. There's also a turret introduced in the later levels, of which there are about 12 in all, but that's not the end. When you beat Heist 2, it starts over on a sort of hard mode, where the entire stage is blue, and the cops are about twice as fast. It can be tricky at first, these later levels, but after playing through this a couple times, you can beat this in about 10 minutes. In classic Atari fashion, Heist 2 is really about getting the best high score. If I had to pick one thing that stuck out to me about this game, it's definitely the sprite for the robber. Something about being monochrome in a color world is kind of fun. Five Nights at Night Watch at Wilfords is definitely not Five Nights at Freddy's. I got this one just to see what would carry over into this Atari version, but it looks like almost everything. The game is basically the same, managing the doors and lights to prevent the animatronics from killing you while trying to conserve your battery. If you reach 6 a.m., you win the night. Although the game isn't very appealing visually, there are some things that really do work here. The lack of music isn't an issue in this game, and the playfield flickering kind of works for the security cameras. As far as I can tell, this is just Five Nights at Freddy's in Atari format, even down to little details, like Bonnie being the most aggressive animatronic on the first night, and Freddy just not doing anything that first night. There's even Freddy flickering through the door if you run out of power. The jump scares are a little less frightening in this version, but Night Watch at Wilfords is a fun experiment of how much you can strip away from a game while still maintaining its identity. Caramojo is a platformer starring a snail, but it's a lot more exciting than you'd expect. The goal here is to grab a key that lets you finish the level, and you're gonna do this very slowly. There's only a few enemies on screen at a time, but it's still pretty hard because you're not going anywhere fast. In a way, this game is perfect for the Atari. It doesn't take much going on screen to make this difficult. You'll have to time your jumps right to move around the stage without getting hit. It's also a pretty good looking game with multicolored sprites. You really do have to give this one points for uniqueness. Punch-Out for the Atari is a fascinating port. The NES version already had to take compromises with perspective and reusing sprites, but here the sprites are even smaller and in a stark black and white. It may not look like much, but this is Punch-Out. You can dodge in all 3 directions, hit high or low, the enemies have their special moves, almost everything is here, except star punches. The roster is obviously cut down, but it still manages to include most of the favorites. Glass Joe, what I can assume is Piston Honda, King Hippo, Great Tiger, and Super Macho Man as the final boss. All the famous tricks in NES Punch-Out work here, like knocking down King Hippo's pants or hitting Great Tiger when he teleports for an easy knockout. But you'll have to be extra diligent in Atari Punch-Out. Getting knocked down means the fight is over. This version of the game is very minimalist. If Punch-Out came out for the Game Boy back in its heyday, I bet it would look a little bit like this. Fox Hunt Arena is a little bit like Heist 2, but with a twist. You're still collecting money here, but the main goal is to collect 3 orbs spawned around the arena until you complete all 7 stages. But watch out, the hunters will be watching you, and there's 3 of them, Nava, Bob, and Carl, and they can end your run pretty quick. You'll have to be careful while wandering the maze, as sometimes they spawn in inconvenient spots. There's a couple power-ups here and there, like an extra hit point or a ghost ability that lets you phase through walls, but eventually you'll get a bow and arrow, which lets you hurt one of the hunters, making them leave the area. And hurting them twice will remove them from that level. But be careful, they run away as soon as you shoot, and it takes a while to reload. That is until you get the gun in the last level. There's basically no downsides to the gun, so it becomes a cakewalk from there on out. Fox Hunt Arena is a fun idea and doesn't seem to be based on any existing IP, but correct me if I'm wrong. Xanthion 2600 is the original Metroid translated for the Atari. It's obviously not going to have everything, but it has way more than you might expect. You'll shoot and jump your way around this alien world as you look for upgrades, and there are still quite a few. Multiple missile and health cases, and the occasional various suit or wave beam scattered around. The map, while shrunken down, is still pretty big, with Brinstar alone having more than 50 screens, and that's not even talking about the other map, Norfair. You'll have to kill both Kraid and Ridley to finish this one, and you better have enough health tanks to do the job. Apparently, there's a version of this game with a more comprehensive feature set coming out soon, so we gotta stay tuned for that one. Robot Z, or Robot Z, how it's probably called by its developer, is an ambitious, original idea. It's a flickerless shooting platformer with background music and scrolling levels, something that would be considered unthinkable on the Atari in its heyday. As you're blasting through the levels, a few of the enemies have power-ups that will drop that let you change things about your robot. The red power-up gives you more armor, and the yellow power-up lets you shoot blobs instead of bullets, etc. There's even a boss at the end of each level. There's apparently 10 levels in all, but only the first 2 are playable in this demo version. Obviously, this is going to draw some comparisons to Mega Man, but it's not exactly the same. The power-ups here are tied to each level instead of being given to you as a reward for beating the boss. It's also way less punishing if you miss a jump, making the game much less frustrating. This demo is very promising, so there's a lot to look forward to. Turbo Arcade is a crazy complex port by Champ Games, who are very much known for their excellent translations. If you've seen any of my Atari videos, you've probably heard of these guys before. The wizardry they put into these conversions is incredible. With Mappy here, it looks great, and there's 3 voice music almost matching the original. Robot War keeps up with Robotron's massive sprite count, and my favorite, Galagon, not only adds a 2-player simultaneous mode to Galaga, but it also outdoes the official port on the 7800. Back to Turbo Arcade. It's based off an arcade game of the same name, and it looks amazing here. There are plenty of locations you'll be driving through, and they all look like something unachievable on the 2600. I have no idea how they get these great scrolling backgrounds into the game. The controls are responsive, there's multiple difficulty modes, manual driving or automatic if you suck at driving games like me. And this is only a demo, so there's even more tracks in the full release. But that's about it for this video. I do want to give a quick shout out though. The main publisher of Champ Games, Atari Age, has moved away from ports in the last few months, so if you at least want to buy the full ROMs for these ports, you can find it at their website. It's called Champ Games, I'll put it in the description. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but it would be a shame if these great conversions stopped being made because of publishing issues, so give them some support, give them some love. Anyway, see ya.